the balance sheets of the European countries individually are just as bad, if not worse, than the United States. France, Germany, Italy, Spain, blah, the Netherlands, they all suck.
NordVPN is becoming more than just a VPN. Threat protection will guard your device against malicious websites, malware, trackers, and intrusive ads, even if you're not connected to a VPN server at the time. Step up your cybersecurity and stay safe.
This is an extract of a much longer video. If you want to see the whole thing, go to bit.ly/CryptoRich3Speak, bit.ly/CryptoRich Odyssey, or bit.ly/CryptoRich Rumble. Hi everybody, welcome once again with my monthly video with Tom Luongo and Alex Krainer. I am joined also by Gordon Dimmack, who's going to co-host this with me. And gentlemen, if you could just briefly say where people can find you, and then we shall start the ball rolling. Tom, please start.
As always, you can follow me on my blog over at goldgoatsandguns.com. You can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728, and you can sign up for the Patreon at patreon.com/goldgoatsandguns and get everything up to, including the monthly newsletter where we have a portfolio strategy and all the rest of it.
And I do recommend it because then you get bonus. You get Tom swearing a couple of times a week on private podcasts that he does to his patrons, and that's quite something. All right, Alex.
I can be found on X. My handle is @NakedHedgie. And on Substack, where I write periodically, my Substack is Alex Krainer's Trend Compass.
Great. And I shall have the links to that description below. And what I follow you on Twitter. I follow all of you. Well, Gordon, you don't post anything on Twitter really, but I follow you both. And Alex, what I really appreciate is how much you applaud European values and how
yes, I'm very fond of European values.
Yes. Gordon,
Me
where
too.
can people find you?
What are these European values? Are these European values hate Vladimir Putin and the Russians? Because that's what the media will tell you, right? Everybody, you can find my work at gordondimmack.com. I'm interested to see what these European values are.
Well, I think that hating Vladimir Putin is just the foundation. That's the least anyone can do to affirm their European values. But then there's, freedom of speech, democracy, human rights, diversity, inclusiveness. Did I miss any?
Climate change.
Climate. Yeah.
Intersectionality.
Gordon, you have to understand. Alex has his tongue very firmly in his cheek. Okay, it's not clear, right?
Setting the hook there, dude.
No,
Setting the hook.
That's right. That's right.
All the awesome things that belong in the garden, none of that jungle business.
Exactly.
I'm so happy we live in a utopia like that.
That's
Yeah,
right.
here we are to talk about it all.
Yes.
It's utopia of some kind, but whether it's you, dismiss, mal, what
Yeah, look, you get to identify as whatever you want.
Of course.
And I was just considering maybe identifying as a nobility, and I'd like for everybody to call me Your Highness. How about that?
I consider myself a druid and a jelly donut all at the same time. So we'll go with that.
Okay. All right. Enough nonsense. Now to some more serious nonsense. And by the way, the first 10 minutes or so will be on YouTube. So please try and restrain yourselves. And then after that,
all jokes now, and then and no content, and then
the serious stuff later. Yeah,
serious stuff.
And the serious stuff whenever we get around to it.
Well, I thought we could start with this dictator had this election in a rather small country, which has a lot of resources, and the people in the West are very, very upset that they voted for this dictator. Tom, Alex, either of you want to start with that?
I can take a jab. Since we're being serious, I think that the West has been uniformly hostile to Vladimir Putin since about October 2003. This is when Vladimir Putin slammed one of the oligarchs in Russia, Mikhail Khodorkovsky, in prison because Mikhail Khodorkovsky was challenging Putin's political power against the advice to all oligarchs to stay out of politics. And the oligarchs who were lionized in the West are the maverick businessmen who were transforming Russia from the rotten communist system to the wonderful capitalist system, were actually simply what 100 years ago in the United States would be called the robber barons. And Mikhail Khodorkovsky himself was probably a murderer. He probably ordered people killed. This is practically a foregone conclusion. But he was actually busted for tax evasion, which is good enough. Put him away for 9 years, and so nothing really changed. Everybody knew that Vladimir Putin was going to win the elections because he's extraordinarily popular. He has been extraordinarily successful as the leader of Russia, both in terms of improving the living conditions for the ordinary Russians, improving the Russian economy, diversifying it, returning Russia to the system of law and order, which it wasn't when he came to power in 2000. And then, defending Russia against terrorism. We have to remember that Russia fought two wars in Chechnya. Both of them were orchestrated by the CIA through Chechen and Dagestani terrorists, many of whom were recruited in Afghanistan by Osama bin Laden. And then he also successfully intervened in Syria, which is strategically of great importance to Russia as well. And now he has his military is prevailing in Ukraine. So very little, for anybody who pays attention to real news, to the truth of the matter, rather than the mainstream narrative in the Western media, Vladimir Putin is a really uniquely successful leader of a country, to the best advantage of the people of the country, not a handful of oligarchs, but the ordinary people. Lives have improved immeasurably since 1999, and so of course, he's gonna win the election. And from what we heard from a few election observers, there was no issue. The elections were free and fair. There was very high turnout, and people voted for Vladimir Putin with a majority of 87 point something percent. Now, the West has a problem with this, but the West has a problem with a lot of things. Practically, if you go by the mainstream narrative, everything is inverted, everything is inside out and backwards. And so, if Russia has an election and Vladimir Putin wins, he's a dictator. If Vladimir Zelensky cancels elections in Ukraine, well, that's a wonderful example of a Western-style democracy. Everything is wonderful, liberal, human rights bursting at the seams. And so I think if the West, at this point, if the West says that Vladimir Putin is a dictator and that the elections were illegitimate, then obviously the elections were legitimate and he's not a dictator. So, yeah, that's my take on the situation.
Very good. Thank you, Alex. Tom?
Yeah, the thing that was striking to me was that in the middle of a war, which the West has done everything imaginable to try and turn into a problem for Putin, he got more of the vote than anybody expected him to. I think even Putin himself was confused, was a little shocked at how strong the turnout was for him. Now, the chattering classes here in the West will say the exact same thing over and over again. Well, that just proves no one ever gets 87% of the vote. Therefore, by definition, it has to be a tainted election, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, no, folks, this is what happens, like, as Alex pointed out, when people have a leader who they trust actually has their best interests at heart, even if they disagree with him on certain things. And there are plenty of Russians who disagree with Putin about how he has conducted this war, but no one in Russia thinks that he's somehow a fifth columnist for the West or he's working for somebody else. None of those narratives stick to him. Okay. Whereas here in the US, or in the West, we have people who deeply, the people who are mostly complaining about Putin's re-election are people with 15, 20, 22%, 17% approval ratings. These are people that are running, that are in charge of cobbled together coalitions of 3 and 4 parties where no one has the support of more than 15% of the population. And they cobble some stupid parliamentary bullshit together in order to further the agenda and ensure the agenda moves forward of those who are transnational globalists. Everybody in Europe, every European I talk to knows that their leadership doesn't actually work for them. And so the contrast is striking. And something else that needs to be pointed out here, and this is a general comment about almost everything we're going to talk about today, is the following. These fucking people that I like to call the Davos crowd have to go out of their